What kind of atheist were you, Tim?
I think a die-hard atheist. The idea of being a Christian was completely alien. I thought they were gullible imbeciles, probably, David. So to find myself in that position was a bit of a surprise.
Okay, so was it an intellectual thing or an emotional thing that just drove you away from the very idea of God?
Right, okay. I was brought up Church of England. So when I was young, I used to go to church with my parents. Was confirmed, I think I was probably about 12 at that time. And then shortly after that, the vicar that confirmed me left the church. And he'd had a conversation with my parents about it and said that he left the church because he didn't believe it anymore. Oh. So that probably was a bit of a factor.
Right.
But I was also being taught all sorts of things at school, as we are, about evolution, about science, and we can explain everything in a sort of materialistic way, which I completely bored and grew up to become, but I would have said by the time I was 20, I was very much an atheist.
Right.
But I remember some quite formidable discussions about it, and I was fierce. I would have said I was fiercely atheist. Because like I said, I thought that if somebody was a Christian, they were just gullible idiots.
And a bit deluded, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Completely.
Vulnerable.
But also that that was something they'd chosen. It was about faith and nothing else. So not based on evidence, not based on proof, just blind faith. I completely missed the benefits. So I didn't see any of the benefits to it or what somebody might get out of that. And so that was how I started out. And my journey to Christianity came about about 10 years ago. It might be 9.
Okay, so you had a lifetime of pure, unadulterated atheism.
Absolutely.
It can all be explained in the science books.
Yeah.
The Big Bang, what did you think about that? It was just an accident?
Well, as regards the Big Bang, I just took what I was being told.
Right.
As being
fact. Yes, and same with evolution. It's fact.
Yeah.
You were once a fish, and then you became a monkey, and then not you personally, Tim, but your ancestors. So we taught this at school, and we still are today, as fact, not a theory.
Yeah.
So you bought into that
Completely.
Did you hate the idea of God?
I didn't like the idea of God. I certainly didn't like the idea of accountability in any way.
Interesting.
Because like everybody else, I'm far from perfect. And there's things that I would definitely go back and do differently if I could.
Did you have any Christian friends, or would you have chosen a Christian friend if you'd met someone you really quite liked them and you discovered they were born again Christian? How would that make you feel?
I don't think that would have put me off necessarily if they were nice people.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have made any sense to me. It just didn't compute.
Right. Did you have born-again Christians in your life?
Think of anybody.
No. They probably wouldn't admit it to you, though, would they?
No, probably not, because I would have argued with them.
So you're a hypnotist. This is what you do for a job.
Yeah.
So, and you've been doing it for very many years.
20-something years, yeah.
So you started as a full-on atheist hypnotist.
Yeah.
How did the transition occur?
Right, okay. Well, something happened in 2007 that I think should have woken me up but didn't, which I can talk about later. But basically what happened, it's almost 10 years ago. There was a hotel nearby which was being refurbished. And as I went in to get lunch next door, I noticed there was a Gideon's Bible sitting in a skip.
How did you see that?
Well, it was just sitting on the top. And there was just a part of me thought, well, that can't be right. It just didn't seem right it being there. Now, I think I probably would have rooted any book out, but it happened to be a Bible. Right. So I took it out of the skip and I put it in the back of the car. And I thought, well, at the very least, I can take it to a charity shop. Somebody's going to want to read it, which is what I did. So I know I don't have that Bible anymore. I did take it to a charity shop. But within about 2 or 3 days of doing that, I saw a video on YouTube that made me question certain things about our history. What
was the video?
Well, it was on a channel, but it's a channel which doesn't have many subscribers. A lot of his channel is looking at sort of ancient and megalithic sites and interpreting them in a way which is very different. So there's he's got numerous videos where he'll look at a structure and say, actually, this was built, it wasn't rock cut, and here's the evidence. So I looked at that and I thought, well, he's probably right about this. And some of it was very strange and a bit mind-blowing. And I thought, can this be right? Can it not be? But it just started me on a journey of exploration. So I started looking at megalithic sites and what some people were saying about them versus the sort of conventional view.
So was it this that maybe triggered something in your brain to question the accepted when it comes to...
Yeah, I thought, right, I'm going to question what I've been told.
About God?
No, not about God.
Not about God at this point?
No, okay. Absolutely not. Just about our history.
Our history as in British history?
As in the history of... Humanity.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I started digging into that. And the idea of God hadn't even entered my mind at this point.
Okay.
At this point.
And why would it? You're a hardcore atheist.
Yeah. But the thing is, one of the things that, as a hypnotherapist, I need to do is somebody will walk in with a problem, and that's because they're modelling reality in a certain way. Mm-hmm. It's either the world around them, they've all got it in for me, or it's the way they feel about themselves. But that is an invention. And it's something that we've cooked up in our own heads. Mm. And if you want to change somebody's opinion about something, then you obviously need to show them something different.
Right.
So I think partly because of the things that I'd realised simply because I was using hypnosis, about the fact that we can't really trust a lot of the conclusions that we've probably reached and where they came from. And that the only way really to get a balanced view is to look at evidence on both sides. Mm. It was that, and looking at these things related to our history, I thought, hang on, I need to have a look at the history of the sort of evolution of mankind in general, and take a look at what the other side is saying. So that meant that I'd ended up looking to get an alternate viewpoint about our history and so forth. That meant looking at people that were saying things that were different. Right. That were looking at the same evidence but seeing something completely different. Okay, so, and that fairly quickly led me down the route of looking at evolution.
Interesting.
Okay. Probably the most significant thing in that regard was a chap called Kent Hovind. I don't know whether you've heard of him.
No.
Right, okay. Kent Hovind is a very interesting character. He recorded a whole series of lectures, essentially tearing evolution down, just by looking at evidence. And his lectures are very well worth. If you haven't seen them, they're worth watching. They're free on YouTube, and a huge number of people had seen them. At some point, he evidently upset the United States government. Right. This was during the Clinton administration, and he was sent to prison for structuring, which was an invented... It basically took his own money out of his own account, basically.
Okay.
And they called it structuring. It didn't make any sense, but he spent quite a lot of time in prison. And he was moved around. So he was very much a Christian. Mm. And so he did these talks on evolution, but he very honestly started the first one by saying, I'm going to talk about evolution, but my intention is for you to become a Christian.
Wonderful.
Right, okay. So it was clear right from the start. And I thought, well, there's no chance of that.
Hang on, how did you feel about that?
Oh, I hated it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I hated it.
Right.
But I thought, well, I'm going to listen and see, because the only way you can assess something, like I say, is to look at both sides.
Sure,
so I thought, right, okay, well, I'll look at what the other side says, I'm certainly not going to buy the Christianity part, but I'll at least take a look at the evolution part. Anyway, his arguments are absolutely devastating.
Right.
And there's a whole load of debates that he did with university professors all around the world, a lot in America, where they would wheel out the big guns. These are the people that can argue evolution for us, and he would single-handedly just take them out.
Right.
And so I decided that what I needed to do was just approach it with a completely open mind, not with a preconception, and just to give both sides equal opportunity to put their case. And because I'd never looked at the sort of intelligent design, evolution doesn't make sense kind of argument, I thought, right, okay, I'll look at it. Anyway, so the Kent Hovind lectures are brilliant. They are incredible. But anyway, when he was in prison, and this is a bit of an aside, but when he was in prison, he was sent to various different prisons. He didn't stay long in one prison because every time he went in, he would start converting people. so I think he was in prison, I think, for about 9 years, but he was in nearly 40 prisons by my recollection.
Right.
So they just kept moving him. So anyway, eventually he was released. And I think definitely a changed man, but it hasn't stopped him, and he's just carried on. Anyway, so once I'd watched the Kent Hovind lectures about evolution, it was obvious that the science in support of it was not good. So then I started looking at other things as well. So I dug into things like something called abiogenesis, which is how life actually springs. So you've got non-life and it springs into life.
So life being created from non-living rocks and mud and water.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Yeah.
So I looked at that in detail, decided that didn't make any sense. There is no evidence that it happened in an unguided fashion.
No, it's never happened in history.
Yeah, there's lots of evidence that it didn't. So I was finding out that a lot of the things that I'd been taught when I was at school were just that had been presented as fact.
Yeah,
were highly debatable.
Sure.
At best. Sometimes it was just flat out fraud.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I remember from the biology textbooks was these drawings of like how we develop. And so it would be a single cell, 2 cells, 4 cells.
Yeah.
And then you get something that looks like a fish.
Yeah.
And then a tadpole.
Yeah.
And then something that looks a little bit more like a chicken.
Yeah.
And then ultimately it becomes a person.
Yes.
Right. Well, they're still in the textbooks.
Yes.
But those were originally created by somebody called Ernst Haeckel. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Okay. He admitted, even when he was working himself, and this is late 19th century, it was a fraud.
Yeah.
And even though it was been admitted as a fraud, many school textbooks still contain his drawings.
They do.
So there was that, and then there was the evolution of the horse and all sorts of things, which turns out just flat out fakery.
Yeah.
At best. So I can't remember where I was going.
Right. No, but I want to take you back to how you're feeling. Are you
Right.
still? You get to a point where you think evolution is a farce. It's made up. I mean, Darwin's book was published in 1859, the time when we were still travelling around on horses. Not very many people left their villages. No indoor toilets. That was the world. No electricity. That was the world that this theory was born into. So you get to a point where you don't believe that theory, but you must be asking questions as an atheist. If I don't believe that theory, which is the religion of atheism, where were you? Where were you emotionally at this point? Because if you don't believe that theory, really atheism is dead. It dies on the altar of evolution, does it not?
Well, it didn't for me.
You must have been hardcore.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, so I spent years looking at this. It must have taken me about 4 or 5 years, and I just continually looked into it.
Well, it is a huge subject. I've been looking at it for the last 12 months, and so I'm only 25% of the work that you've put into it. You could spend a lifetime looking.
Yeah, so I looked at geology, I looked at cosmology, I looked at biochemistry, I looked at how proteins form. So even the formation of a protein, and we're basically built out of proteins. I found out that they have to be created in a, well, not created, but for a protein to form, they're built out of these smaller building blocks called amino acids. And when I was at school, I was taught you've got this prebiotic soup full of amino acids. You get a couple of lightning bolts. They all connect together. You get some proteins. Hey, presto, you've got life.
Yes.
And this is the way it's sort of portrayed. But the reality is that people have tried to do that and they can't get it to work.
And they've spent hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in an attempt to do it.
Yeah, they've really tried to do it. Even a small protein, by my recollection, it's a long time since I looked at this. A small protein maybe has 150 amino acids in a linked together in a chain. Even to get a protein, a simple protein, the odds against it are,
almost incalculable.
And you end up with a number which is many, many times bigger than the number of subatomic particles in the observable universe.
Right.
That's just to form one protein.
Yes. Yeah.
But you need a lot of proteins, and our cells are made out of essentially sort of these biological machines.
And for a cell to come to life, everything has to be in order at exactly the same moment. It cannot evolve because it's not a living thing.
Yeah,
it all has to be in place at that moment for the cell to burst into life.
Yeah, so there's sort of this simple... When people haven't looked into it, I think they just take what they're told as being true.
Well, I did.
And I did.
Tim. I did question it at the time. And I remember being told by my biology teacher when I said to him, is this possible? Do you think that God might have had a hand in that? And the answer was a very aggressive, no, it just happened, Harper.
Yeah.
That was the end of that conversation. So we had to just take it at face value, take it as described.
Yeah, so anyway, they've found out that our cells are basically full of molecular machines, which are all formed out of proteins.
Right. And we've got 30 trillion cells in us. We've got 30 trillion times our DNA number, which is 3 billion digits long. I wrote in the book that a car registration number, I'm big into my cars, car registration number is 20 inches long on average. If you were to put your DNA number on a car registration number, it would be 300,000 miles long.
Wow.
And you've got that printed throughout your whole body 30 trillion times. So this was the kind of evidence I was reading and thinking, something designed this, something made it. And at the same time, I'm reading the New Testament and I read a passage where Jesus says, every hair on your head is numbered. That for 2,000 years has been seen as just, hyperbole. But in actual fact, it's absolutely correct. Every hair on your head is indeed numbered with your DNA. So that's where I was going. So at what point are you starting to question your atheism, Tim?
I honestly don't know. It took a while, but it was so fascinating. And the more I found out, because I think the reason I probably spent so long is because I didn't want that to accept that I'd been wrong.
Okay.
I just kept looking. I just kept digging, probably hoping that I would find something that would ultimately allow me to hang on to that worldview.
Got you. That makes sense, doesn't it? That makes sense.
Yeah. But like I said, I looked at absolutely everything. But I used, prior to being doing hypnosis, I used to be a computer analyst and programmer. So and DNA is essentially a program. And the idea that a program can write itself makes no sense.
No.
If you've got a program, somebody programmed it. It's that simple.
Yes.
It's not going to write itself. It's a bit like saying Microsoft Windows, which is going to be simplicity itself by comparison with DNA. If you just made random changes to it, it would improve itself. I mean, that is just nonsense.
It would be exactly
It would
the
just
opposite.
break.
Yeah. Take one chip out of a computer and it decides to
it will just break.
Malfunction. Yes.
Yeah. So so anyway, so there's all of that, and eventually I reached a point of saying, right, okay, we had to be created, but there are some really important arguments for that, which I think are probably worth mentioning. So one is the Big Bang. Scientists have the view that in the beginning there was nothing. So this is the official scientific viewpoint. In the beginning there was nothing. Nothing exploded. It created everything. That's time, space, and matter all springing into existence at the same time. But also it creates the laws of logic, the laws of physics, and the laws of mathematics.
Yes.
Right, okay. So all of those things have to come from nothing.
Nothing.
Well, my experience is that nothing can ever create something, never mind everything.
Yeah.
There are two basic choices you can make. You can say nothing created everything or something created everything.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it makes far more sense, and it takes a lot less faith
Yes.
to say something must have created everything.
So is this where you, Tim, got to?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, and was that scary, thinking, well, what was that something? Could it be
by
God?
that point, I think probably not. It just didn't, it wasn't like a bolt of lightning hitting me. It was just a sort of gradual realization, I think. But so time, space and matter have to come into existence all at the same time. If you've got matter, you have to have space and time because you've got to have somewhere to put it and somewhen to put it. So what that means is whatever caused the creation of the universe has to be spaceless, it has to be timeless, and it has to be immaterial. Well, that sounds a lot like God. But it also has to be intelligent, partly because of the fine-tuning of the universe, which is a real problem for the scientists, and they've come up with all sorts of fudges to avoid it. But also because things like logic and mathematics and those rules, the way things work has to come from somewhere.
Yes, and they explain how things work, but they don't explain how things were created.
Exactly.
Mathematics and physics can tell you how the universe is functioning, but mathematics and physics cannot create the universe.
Yeah, the fact that it is even explainable
Yes.
implies some kind of intelligence behind it.
It does, and mathematics is an interesting one because did the human mind invent mathematics, or did the human mind discover mathematics?
I think we discovered mathematics.
Of course,
yeah.
because it was there pre-humanity. So where did mathematics come from?
Yeah, exactly.
It all points back to one thing: a creator.
It absolutely does for me.
Okay.
I think, because like I said, I looked at everything.
Gosh, you didn't have to go on a deep dive.
I looked at everything.
Okay, so how long were you deep diving into this
About
information?
4 or 5 years.
4 years, and after the 4 or 5 years, you're still an atheist, or are you agnostic now?
No,
what are you?
by the time I finished that, I believed in God.
You believed,
and I'd also looked at a lot of the history in the Old Testament. Can we find evidence for some of these events? Because it's a history book as well. Can we find evidence for these events around the world?
Can.
Which we absolutely can.
Yeah.
So where Sodom was, for example, the desert is littered with these white balls of sulfur.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and there seemed to be a lot of support for the sort of, at least the history within the Old Testament.
Yes.
And by this point, I'd concluded, yes, we were created, God exists.
Yeah.
But I'd made no connection between the Old Testament and the New.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
So,
go back to that for a moment.
Right.
So what was your understanding of the Bible, Old and New, prior to this journey?
I didn't really have an understanding, I don't think.
No.
I just thought it was this book that people read,
a bit dusty,
believed if they were a bit simple.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't really pay it any attention.
No. So you'd never read it, never studied it?
No.
Had you ever spoken to anybody who had?
Well, like I said, I was confirmed. So we obviously, I obviously had at a young age, but later on, no.
No. Okay, so you start delving into the Bible.
Yeah, so like I said, I'd reached a point of thinking, well, actually, yeah. So there's some things in the Old Testament that I think are allegory rather than history, and they're ways of explaining things in a way which people could understand at the time.
Yeah.
But as far as that goes, I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah.
And like I said, at that point, I'd realised, yes, that absolutely we were created. So I was a believer in God, but not necessarily Jesus. Because one of the things, well, there was the resurrection, which is obviously a bit problematic for most people. And then I thought, well, hang on a second. If God is powerful enough to create absolutely everything, the idea of bringing one person back to life, that's small potatoes.
It's like popping a balloon in comparison. If you can create the universe in an instantaneous moment, billions and billions of miles deep, the resurrection is nothing.
Yeah. So obviously the reason people don't believe it is because they don't see it happening.
Yeah.
But that
you don't see the universe happening.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't happen.
No.
If a being or an entity is powerful enough to bring the universe into existence, yes, it's trivial.
Completely. Completely. But science, interestingly, is proving biblical miracles as perfectly possible, and it's doing it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of you and I, videoing this and putting a video out on YouTube, or having a video call between you and I and our friend 3 miles away to our medieval ancestors would have been miraculous.
Yeah.
So, what we do on a daily basis would have been seen as a miracle only 100 years ago.
Yeah. So anyway, in order to make the connection between Old and New Testament, I wasn't really looking to do that. But somebody asked me a question, and I can't remember who it was. And I said, well, I'd need to see evidence that these two things are connected. Well, sure enough, next day on YouTube,
it popped up.
A video comes up, which is there are some very interesting YouTube channels where they look at the structure of the Bible in a sort of a numeric and pattern way, from sort of like. So there was one channel which is called The Living Word, if I remember rightly, where he looks at patterns in the text of the Bible. So Hebrew and Greek are two languages where each letter has a number associated. A lot of languages aren't like that, but they're quite unusual. They do. So he goes through that, and there's some fascinating videos about that. So that's The Living Word. There's another YouTube channel called, again, I'm trying to remember what it's called, Truth is Christ, I think. And that's looking at patterns in the Bible, which you can only really do now because we've got computers. So you can analyze the text. And there are some really amazing discoveries that have been made there, which really imply that, well, statistically, again, they are so unlikely, it appears not to have happened by accident.
Yes.
But some of these things bridge the two books.
Well, I think there are between 300 and 500 predictions in the Old Testament which match perfectly with the New.
Yes, there are.
So, the whole Bible written over 1,600 years, 3 different languages, 2 or 3 different continents, all coming together to make perfect sense. And it does make perfect sense.
Yeah, it does.
The deeper you dive into it, I was taught, really, that the Bible was nothing but a fairy tale. It was nonsense for silly people.
Yeah.
But the deeper you get into it, do you find that your brain sort of expands? I know C.S. Lewis said, the more you study the Bible, the cleverer you become. And I think it's true, Tim. It's true, Tim. It opens up avenues and doorways to places in your mind you never knew existed. It is so clever and so wise. It's shocking. It's shocking to me. Well,
like I said, if anybody's watching this and they've got doubts about it, another thing that is worth looking at is something. It's Koinonia House, I think.
Right.
There was an information scientist called Chuck Missler who did some wonderful talks on numeric patterns in the Bible. And there's one in particular about sevens in Isaiah, which is incredible. And it's well worth watching.
Okay, so somebody could Google that. Sevens in Isaiah.
You can Google these things and watch them.
And I think this is the great thing about the internet. The internet is opening up these discussions. 20 years ago, we weren't allowed to have open discussions like this. It would have been closed down. We would have been ridiculed to have conversations like this. Where the internet has opened up those channels and there is an alternative view. You found the alternative view. So you came to a point where you realised that there is a creator. That creator can only be called God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why was it the Christian God? There's been 3,000 gods throughout worship, throughout human history.
That's really why I've decided that I needed to connect the Old and New Testament and see if there was a proper link between those two things.
Yes.
Or whether Jesus coming along was just not even connected.
Right.
Because with my the sort of atheistic way of looking at it that I had certainly was, well, it's fanciful nonsense. It's a nice way to think, if I die, I'll get saved, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But it also seemed like a sort of get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
Oh, if you believe, then whatever you do, it's all right. You can do whatever you like.
Well, that's right.
But of course, that was wrong as well.
It's totally wrong. That's the whole idea that, when I was an agnostic and I'd have atheist friends who would say, well, Christians, they can go and commit all these sins. They go to church on a Sunday. They're all forgiven. They're hypocrites.
Yeah.
It isn't how it works. But we'll get on to that.
Yeah.
So I want to know, at what point did you decide it was the Christian God and not one of the 3,000 other gods?
Well, like I said, once I connected those two books and saw that they were a unified whole, at that point I knew it had to be.
It made sense.
Yeah.
Right.
But also, I'd also done, I think, the same as you, looking at things like the evidence for the resurrection.
Yes.
I'd come across cold case Christianity.
Yes.
I had a look at the evidence for the Turin Shroud, all of the analysis for that.
And there's new evidence. I don't know when you last looked at the Turin Shroud. I mean, it's very recent evidence. I mean, the Turin Shroud, I must say, for me, is incredibly convincing. I will do a standalone video on that. Dr. John I don't know if you've heard of Dr. John Campbell, the YouTuber. Yes.
He did a video about the Turin Shroud.
He did, I saw that.
And he's got a very, very scientific brain.
Absolutely. He's convinced it is the shroud of Jesus Christ.
So that's basically why. I just needed to connect the two things. And
how long did it take?
Oh, a long time. Yeah.
Now, so you got to a point where you intellectually decided it was true.
Yeah.
And you intellectually decided that you then must therefore be a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
What happened emotionally?
Well, the first thing that happened emotionally, I think, was the hysterical laughter at one point. I remember one day, and I can't remember exactly what it was.
I loved that.
I can't remember what it was, but I'd found something out, something I'd always believed. Again, I looked at the evidence and I thought, there's no way this is true.
Yeah.
But it was just, it was a bit like dominoes, and there was just one thing after another, because I'd looked at so many different things and found out that actually this wasn't science, this was, it was being interpreted in a way which was quite purposefully to exclude any other possibilities. The idea of intelligent design, so there was a prejudice there which underpinned it.
Absolutely. I think we're being propagandized
we are.
Against the God of the Bible since the time of Darwin.
Yeah. But anyway.
And it's almost worked. It's only now that the tables are turning.
I know.
But come on, let's get into your emotions.
So what happened was, I'd had this realization, this is wrong as well.
Yeah.
And that was like it was like an entire house of cards just collapsing completely. And I laughed hysterically for about 20 minutes because it was trying to get my head around the fact that everything was not the way I thought it was.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, so anyway, it's the only time it ever happened.
Well, that's a spiritual thing.
Yeah, it is.
That's a spiritual thing.
There was one thing that I said I wanted to mention, which should have awoken me, I think.
Go on.
So, right, 2007, my wife had been in hospital for months because of liver failure and the rejection of the first transplanted organ that she had.
Mm-hmm.
We had no money coming in, and I was going backwards and forwards to the hospital. I was looking after our daughter, who was very young at the time. And our income was essentially zero. Yeah. And that had gone on for months. And I'd spent a fortune on petrol, £1,500 on parking. And I thought, I went into Tesco's, because my wife had asked me to pick something up because she was struggling to eat the hospital food. That was being shipped in from Wales. And she said it was all like rubber. So anyway, I went into Tesco's, bought what she wanted, and I came out. And I can remember feeling utterly desperate and saying, where on earth is the money going to come from? And all of a sudden, out of the air, a £20 note flutters. And I literally just went like that and pulled it out of the air. And that I've thought about it more recently and thought there's absolutely no way that happened by chance. But even that was not enough to make me question the sort of materialistic nature of the universe. So that was 2007. So that was long before I went down this journey.
Yes, and long before the Bible just appeared in front of your eyes on top of a skip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, No, it's changed. I think it's changed the way I look at everything. And now, I literally, I really struggle to understand how I didn't see it. But I know why I didn't see it. It's because I'd been brainwashed to think one way. And I'd been taught things that weren't true. I'd been taught things as fact that are definitely not facts and certainly highly questionable. I was in a culture that basically rejected it. Yeah, so
it's a lovely story, Tim.
Whatever. That's how I found myself here.
It's a wonderful story. So you've been a Christian for how long now?
Probably, I would say for properly about 4 years.
4 years. How has it changed your life?
It's got a lot more meaning than it had. I'm not frightened of dying. I don't know. I really struggle to put that into words, David.
Are you happier?
Yeah, definitely.
Peaceful?
And I treat people differently as well, I think. You know, it's not perfection. Like everybody else, I get cross sometimes and so forth. But it is different. And I look at things differently. And I try to do things differently.
Does that bring you joy?
I think so. So it's not like, you know, there was like thunderbolt and lightning and all of a sudden it's like a hallelujah type moment. It's just been a sort of gradual change for me. But I do look at things very, very differently. And like I said, I approach things in a different way. The work that I do, you know, I know now that, you know, that's not about me. It's if I'm able to help somebody, it's because somebody's been kind enough to give me that gift.
It's a talent given to you, isn't it?
I don't really know. It's difficult to express. I can't really find the words for it. I'm not sure they even exist, David. I don't know. But I feel completely different. There was something I meant to, in terms of evidence, by the way, for God and a designer. Something struck me, and this is to do with antiques.
Go on.
Okay, so obviously you're interested in antiques and you like beautiful things, right? Evolution is very much a utilitarian process. So it's like, you know, it's survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, throw it out.
That's right.
Right. Okay. When human beings approach things in a utilitarian way, what they produce is horrible. It's ugly, right? The natural world isn't like that. It's incredibly beautiful. And it seems to me, even just taking that point, it's very unlikely that you would end up with incredible beauty through a purely utilitarian way of selecting things.
And talking about the natural world, do you look at the natural world differently now?
I look at everything differently. Yeah, I do.
Nature, birds, the sounds.
Yeah, everything. I'm seeing it in a way that I never did before. I look at it and think that is miraculous.
Yeah. I described it only last night looking up at the sky, because this is what I've noticed in my experience, which is much newer than yours. It's only been this year that I've become a born-again Christian. But I look at the sky and I now see it as a moving piece of artwork. And you mentioned that you burst into uncontrollable laughter. I'm finding that. I'm looking up at the sky and I see a bird fly by and I start to chuckle. As if, why didn't I see this before? This is the glory of God.
I know.
This is as an example of Him. It's everywhere. And I see it as an analogy of me living my life for 50-something years wearing a blindfold. I've taken the blindfold off. I've been living in the dark.
Yeah.
I've taken the blindfold off and I can now literally see the light. And I see the birds, I hear the birds, they're much more powerful. They make me smile, they make me chuckle.
Yeah.
I hear the rain and I am thankful to the creator of the rain. It has the only word that, for me, Tim, this is about you, but just joy is the word that describes it all for me.
Yeah.
A sense of, not like running around the place as high as a kite looking like a hippie, but just a higher level of joy.
Yeah.
As if the petrol tank has been
filled with joy.
Well,
it obviously does deeply affect people. Because even if you go on what I would call anti-social media, if you go and have a look at a discussion of anything where the mention of God comes up, or it might be you could be discussing evolution or whatever.
Yeah.
The approach is completely different. So the atheists are very often incredibly hostile, incredibly unpleasant, and they are extremely nasty in the way they treat the other people. The Christians don't do that. Yeah.
So that's a change in people. It is an effect that Christianity.
Yeah, it definitely has.
There's no doubt about it.
It definitely has.
It's not a pacifist thing. It isn't, because if Christianity had always remained pacifist, it wouldn't have lasted 100 years. Yeah, but generally speaking, it develops, I think, a kindness in people.
It does. It changed, and that's why I think I'm struggling to find a way to express it.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm changed, but as to exactly how, I would find it really difficult to explain and put into words. I just look at everything differently.
Are you a different person?
Yeah.
Could
Definitely.
anything have ever changed the old Tim to the new Tim?
Well, probably not. I can't think of what would have. No.
And I think that is a born again experience. You are literally born again as a new soul, or rather a reawakened spirit.
Yeah.
It is a born again.
It is definitely an awakening. There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
I feel awake now. It's like I was asleep before.